Thinking about moving to Florida and considering Tallahassee? Let me be honest here. Life in the Florida capital is not like the rest of the state, but it's still pretty amazing. We have tons of outdoor activities, 9 months of comfortable weather, loads of boutiques and antique shops to explore, low taxes, unemployment, and cost of living. There's a lot to love about Tallahassee. But like most places, those characteristics that make us unique have both upsides and downsides. We are a college town in the South where the weather can turn on you in an instant and the wildlife is, well, wild. But I think the upsides outweigh the downsides, and I love living in Tallahassee. First, let's talk about Tallahassee being a college town.
The first characteristic to understand about Tallahassee is that it is a college town. Tallahassee itself is not a big city to begin with. With less than 200,000 in the city proper, that number is significantly increased when the students, legislators, and lobbyists come to town. While the students are here 9 months of the year, the legislature is only in session in the spring. That doesn't mean that things are necessarily easier when schools are out of session. That is the time of year that we call turn. Most contractors are either working to repair damage before the new units are turned over to new lessees, or they're hibernating from the heat of July and August. Getting anything done during this time of year can be a challenge, but it is a great time to try out the new restaurants in the university area. With the inundation of thousands of college students each fall, we have a vibrant and young community in the area between downtown Tallahassee and the universities, full of things for young people to do. From a great nightlife scene, art galleries, outdoor activities like hiking and frisbee golf, the downtown Get Down, and First Fridays, there's something for everyone to love. Before I moved here, I knew there was football on Saturdays, but I thought it was just college ball. Football is a religion in Tallahassee. So be prepared for locals to ask you who you root for and to give you a hard time if it's not a Florida or a local team. FSU has been named the #1 party school multiple times, and there's a lot of partying that goes on that side of town, starting Friday afternoons and continuing until after the games on Saturday night. If you are not into that lifestyle though, you can live on the northeast side of Tallahassee, and except for maybe your neighbors screaming at their televisions on Saturdays, you may never even realize that we have world-class football contests going on the southwest corner of town. Unfortunately, owning a car is kind of necessary in Tallahassee. Although there are many walkable and bikeable areas to live in, the city itself is pretty spread out and public transportation options are limited, but there's always Uber and Lyft. Just a thought, if you do decide to drive on that side of town, we have thousands of students rushing to get to class on time, and Florida is the retirement capital of the state. Let's just say that driving on that side of town can be fascinating. Perhaps another influence that the universities have on our surrounding area is that our public utilities are pretty clean, with plans to get even cleaner. In 2019, the City Commission dedicated itself to go 100% clean and renewable resources by 2050. We have solar farms and electric buses, and they are transitioning the rest of the city's fleets over to electric vehicles now. Because of its size and location, Tallahassee has a relatively low cost of living, mostly because Florida does not have state-level income tax. Statewide, the sales tax rate is 6%. Leon County adds an extra 1.5%, making the total Tallahassee sales tax a relatively modest 7.5%. In cities like Chicago and Cleveland, the sales tax rate is over 8%. The average property tax bill is around $1,900 per year for the median home value of around $215,000. This makes Florida one of the lowest tax levels in the country. On the downside, real estate near the universities can be a challenge to find in premium condition. There are lots of units to lease, more units than we have students, and those are generally leased by the room with a shared common space. That way, you don't have to worry about your roommates not paying their portion of the rent and facing eviction yourself. If you do plan to buy, finding a 2-bedroom, 2-bath home within walking distance of the university under $100,000 will be a challenge to find. If you find it, the cost of your mortgage will be less than the $700 a month, and since rooms are renting for that amount and more along Tennessee Street, you may be able to find a roommate to cover the expenses of your mortgage. However, compared with other cities of its size in both Florida and nationwide, Tallahassee has a higher than average crime and poverty rate. Much of the crime happens around the universities, so please remind your students to lock their doors. And the poverty rate is impacted by the fact that many college students are living below the poverty levels, not just in Florida, but all around the United States. The second characteristic to understand about Tallahassee is that we are in the South. Locals have a slight southern drawl, and this makes a lot of sense when you realize that Leon County shares a northern border with Georgia. We'll talk about the weather in a minute, because in Florida, the weather can take center stage with its own personality a lot. But other than the weather, there is a lot that's different about living here than in the Midwest. Florida is a warm and sunny state, and for the most part, that is true about those who live in Tallahassee too. The phrase you'll probably hear the most is going to be, "bless your heart." Now this can mean exactly as it sounds, like a blessing, meaning "you poor thing, I hate that for you." Or it could be a gentler, kinder way of saying, "you poor thing, your mama didn't raise you right." Most of the time, it's safer just to assume they mean it the first way and not the second. This is the Bible Belt, and there are a lot of churches in Tallahassee. If you are a Midwesterner, then you may have been raised up to never ask about religion. So here's a heads up. Locals may ask you where you worship Sunday morning, and even after you tell them, they're likely going to invite you to come with them. They're just friendly that way. Even though we are in Florida, we are not on the coast. This is a mixed blessing. That 30 miles to the coast gives most hurricanes time to calm down by the time they have reached the city of Tallahassee. But even without being on the coast, some of the most beautiful beaches in the world are only an hour and a half away. Please check out St. George Island or Apalachicola. Even though we are in Florida, we have Spanish moss and pollen just like Georgia. The Spanish moss looks cool, especially on the live oaks that cover our 9 designated canopy roads in Tallahassee. We also have a 10-month growing season, so there's always something blooming here. You may want to consider stocking up on allergy meds. Insects also enjoy our mild winters. There's a reason for the number of pest control company trucks you will see driving around Tallahassee. Every business and home needs regular pest control. But in Tallahassee, we live outdoors between September and March. Many local restaurants have outdoor seating under shade or cover, and many of those will allow you to bring well-behaved dogs on leashes to sit under your table. The parks hold festivals and meetings all year long, and there are many nurseries and gardening clubs with amazing flora and fauna in our subtropical zones. We are a dog-friendly community. You can take your dogs to almost all the parks and most public areas, provided that your dogs are kept under your control and on a leash. Tallahassee is an older city, and the streets are laid out like a wagon wheel with the Capitol at the center and the highways that run the 25 to 30 miles to the next town over as spokes of that wheel. This is very different from the grid system I grew up with, and it is one of my biggest pet peeves about the small town. Sometimes a single road will have multiple names, like Mahan in Tennessee, and sometimes multiple roads will have the same name, like Meridian. This can make navigating the city and learning your way around fascinating. In Tallahassee, we do have 4 seasons, and although we do have cold weather at times, we rarely have snow. If the locals have lived here long enough, though, they will want to tell you their experience with snow. It was flurries that didn't stick, but just nod and smile. The length of our freezing temps are measured in hours, though, and not days. And most January days, you can go outside in a sweater and sweatshirt and be comfortable. And number 3, the weatherman, he's a liar. The weather in our corner of Florida has its own personality, and Tallahassee holds the state's record for having the hottest and the coldest temperatures on record. Being nestled in the corner where we are, our weather can change quickly and it can come from any direction. There have been times I've checked to make sure the radar is clear before heading to Clap Phipps Park, only to have the heavens open up on me and the dogs halfway through our hike. Afternoon storms are common. We are 30 miles from the coast, and the clouds collect the Gulf's warm water and drop it on Tallahassee many July and August afternoons. After those afternoon storms, the temps can return to the 90s, and with the 90 to 100% humidity, it can feel like a sweat lodge outside. You will notice that most Tallahasseans do not carry umbrellas. That's because even though we receive an average of 59 inches of rain a year, experience tells us that the weather will roll through quickly and the sunshine will be here soon. Unless there's a tropical system. But you don't have to learn how to read the spaghetti models to know when to duck for cover. There'll be plenty of warning. Since we have so much rain dropped on us every year, we are sort of prepared for most of the smaller tropical storms and rain event hurricanes. You will notice that most Floridians really don't start paying attention till a hurricane reaches a level 3. If you're new here though, take it seriously and pack those emergency supplies. When Hurricane Michael came through Tallahassee, some areas were without power for weeks. In Ohio, we grew up heating up cars while scraping them off so that we could transfer from the warmth of the home to the warmth of the car and then to the warmth of work without freezing. In Florida, we spend July and August moving from the shelter of our home's air conditioning to the car's air conditioning to the commercial air conditioning of our work. The thermometer rarely goes above 100 degrees, but with the 90 to 100% humidity, it's gonna feel a lot hotter. Sunshine everywhere. Even in the cold of winter, we have sunshine. There's a reason why everyone's leaving that 4-letter S word of snow behind and moving here for that new 4-letter S word, sand. And the last thing to understand about Florida is the wildlife is wild and unpredictable. Hunting and fishing is amazing. If you're into the hunting or fishing, our area has a lot to offer. Our deer are closer to the South Georgia giants than those tiny key deer that are often associated with Florida, and our wild boar can get absolutely huge. Shark and deep sea fishing are available in the Gulf just 45 minutes away. Boats can be chartered out of Alligator Point, Carabel, and Apalachicola for reasonable day rates. Fishing licenses are available at most marinas and can be handled before your charter leaves the dock. Florida is the shark bite capital of the world, and fish are most active at dusk and dawn. And sharks are fish. Please be careful when you swim. We have some of the most beautiful parks in the world. There are plenty of birding trails, and Florida has the largest variety of butterflies in the wild. The monarch butterflies stop by the St. Mark's Wildlife Refuge on their way across the Gulf of Mexico every year. They invite you to come and join the celebration. The weather will be gorgeous. If you go hiking though, watch out for rattlesnakes, water moccasins, and Spanish bayonet. Yes, even the vegetation here can draw blood. If you're kayaking the local rivers, you can find rare and endangered lilies and pitcher plants growing wild on the banks. Alligators and manatees are common on the rivers. The manatees are endangered, and it is a federal crime to interfere with them in any way. The alligators are usually going to run from you if you get too close, and if they don't run, they are probably hungry. So keep your kids and pets close and run in the zigzag if you have to. Some of the bugs they don't mention often are the love bugs. They come to North Florida twice a year in May and September. They don't bite or get inside your house or really do much of anything except get hit by your car, especially if you have to drive long distances in rural areas. But if you wash them off right away, they probably won't damage your paint. Palmetto bugs. Seriously, this is just a nice word for flying cockroaches. Call the pest control guys if you see them. We have lots of companies to choose from, and monthly services usually cost less than $50. Fire ants are everywhere in our area. Watch out for the little red mounds, and please don't disturb them, or they're going to leave little red mounds all over your skin that itch and irritate. In addition to being the state capital, Tallahassee is surrounded by agricultural and agritourism businesses. Every October, there's a farm tour where local farmers invite you to see where your local food comes from and to meet your farmers. We have several restaurants that source much of their menus locally. Since our little city is growing, we have lower unemployment on average than the rest of the nation. The most common industries in Tallahassee are related to government or schools here, and those industries were less impacted by the jobs lost in the recession. As a result, Tallahassee did not have the same impact to our real estate market as the rest of the state. For the most part, except for a few condos and townhouses, the housing market has surpassed the high levels before the crash in 2008. The past 7 years has seen steady increases in property values and more buyers than we have homes to sell. One final word: when you come to Florida, whether you plan to move here or visit, please remember that seagulls are flying rats. They will mug you for your hot wings. Please don't feed the seagulls.